How to knit socks toe up, a step-by-step tutorial for beginners. Hi everyone, Norman here. In today's video I want to show you everything you need to know about knitting socks toe up. Perfect for anyone who doesn't like the Kitchener stitch or hates picking up stitches here for the heel. This is going to be a very comprehensive tutorial where I show you all the little steps involved to finish this toe-up sock knitting pattern with success. When to start knitting the heel, how long should you knit the calf, how to adjust things if you have a higher instep or you need a roomier heel. At the end of this video, I want you to be in a position where you know exactly what you're doing, where you know exactly how to adjust things according to your preferences, and ultimately how to knit socks that really fit. So let's head over to my desk and show you how to knit socks toe up, no matter if you prefer double-pointed knitting needles or circular needles. I'm going to knit these socks using circular needles with a 60cm cord and this Schachenmeier Regia 6-ply yarn. But the pattern will work for double-pointed knitting needles just as well. I thought DK weight yarn would show well on camera, but normally I use fingering weight sock yarn. The pattern will work either way, just like you could knit it only using one color. To access the written instructions, click on the first link in the description, and the full tag-edited version of this pattern with 12 pages is available for all supporters on my Patreon account. And I'm actually currently in the process of preparing an advanced sock knitting course for my patrons as well, so definitely don't miss that. First, we need to find out your size. We want to knit socks that really fit and not blindly follow a sock chart and rely on pure luck. And the beauty about knitting socks toe up is that this process is beyond simple. So, start with knitting a simple swatch. Just cast on 24 stitches and knit across 20 rows or so in plain stockinette stitch. Then wash your swatch and block it. Treat it the way you would treat your finished socks. If you plan to throw your finished socks in the washing machine, put your swatch in there as well. Some will even carry around the swatch in their pocket or put it below the blanket on their couch for a couple of days to simulate wear and tear, because what will often happen is that your socks fit hot off the needle, but then after 2 or 3 times wearing them, they tend to wear out and are a little bit too big. Next, we need to measure your swatch. I typically do that on the blocking board and stretch my fabric until I feel this looks nice and this is how I want my finished project to look like. Not too condensed and not overstretched. And then you need to find out your stitch gauge. So what I want you to do is, I want you to count 10 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And measure how many inches or centimeters you need to cover those 10 stitches. In my case, it's 4.5 centimeters. And then maybe measure one more time in a different spot to ensure that you didn't stretch your swatch a little bit weirdly. Next, divide the length you measured, so in my case 4.5 centimeters, by those 10 stitches. And that's obviously very simple, 0.45 centimeters per stitch. Next, measure your foot at its widest point. So not up in here or back, around the ankle, just somewhere here in the middle. Maybe check a couple of different positions and find the widest point. In my case, it's 23 centimeters. And now in the last step, you only have to divide those 23 centimeters by the length of your stitch. So 23 divided by 0.4.5 centimeters, and the result will be 51.1 or something like that. Use your calculator or your mobile phone, no need to do that in your head. And then round to the nearest number, divisible by 4 in my case, that will be 52. So that means I need to cast on 52 stitches. So this means we can already start knitting those socks toe up. Set aside a little tail that is maybe 10 inches or 25 centimeters. And we'll begin with the magic cast on. And we need to cast on altogether 16 stitches. If you are using fingering weight yarn, maybe go for 20, and for very small sizes or very thick yarn, maybe just 12. And now bring the yarn in this famous slingshot position. And now we don't want a visible knot, so I'm not going to start with a slip knot, but just with a twisted loop, just like this. See what I'm doing here? Just a twisted loop around the top needle. Next, you need to grab the yarn towards the index finger with the bottom needle, like so. And then pick the yarn towards the thumb with the top needle, with the bottom needle. Just weave your needle around those two ends of the yarn. And in that manner, you need to cast on altogether 16 stitches, 8 on each side. Now I'll link you to my full tutorial on the magic cast on up in here if this is too fast. But remember, you can always slow down this video. Just click on the little settings button and play it at 50% of the speed. And now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on each side. This means 2 more. So I have my 16 stitches on my needle, and next you need to turn your work around counterclockwise. This is important. Turn your work around counterclockwise because this will secure this first stitch, and then we can start knitting in the round. So pull out the bottom needle, pull out that bottom needle and knit across the top needle. Now the stitches on this needle will appear to be twisted, so we are going to knit all those stitches here through the back loop, all those little stitches through the back loop, and just for the very first needle and in the very first round, all other stitches can be knit the regular way. So knit that, and then pull back this needle, pull out that needle, turn around and knit across the second needle. Now very important, as you knit across, don't pull too tight. This will produce a visible ear later on. Just for this very first row, just keep a loose tension so that all these stitches can breathe and have enough room. If you pull too tight, you will always end up with ears. We finished our first little round and your project should look like this. From here, we need to start increasing our toe box, and we are going to do this with KFB, knit front and back. So pull back that bottom needle, turn your work around, pull out that other needle. Always do it in that order, because otherwise you might pull out the other needle a little bit too far. So I'm going to knit one stitch here, and now I'm going to knit one front and back. Knit one through the front, keep this loop on the needle and knit it through the back loop, and then knit across until you are 2 stitches before the edge. And now you could knit another KFB, or you knit an SKL, slip, knit, lift. This is the corresponding right leading increase to KFB. So slip one stitch knitwise, slip that back point to point, and then knit that stitch. And now lift the loop here, one row below this loop, back to the knitting needle and knit it through the back loop. That's how you knit SKL, slip, knit, lift. We'll do this one more time in a second, but I'll also link you to my full tutorial on my second YouTube channel up in here, where you can see it in slow motion. Turn around and push that needle back and pull out the bottom needle. Let's do that one more time. So we are going to knit one stitch here and then knit another KFB, knit front and knit back, and then knit across until you are 2 stitches before the edge. And now we are going to knit another SKL. So slip knitwise, slip back point to point, knit through the front loop, find the right leg of the loop below, lift it back to your left needle and knit that through the back loop and knit one. So why am I using this increase here? Well, at the beginning of the toe box, you have to increase in every round, or at least I do it. And so until you have doubled your stitch count. So we start with 16 stitches, and I want you to increase until there are 32 stitches in every row. And this cannot be done with make one right and make one left in a neat way. And some people use a yarn over, but that typically creates little holes, even if you knit it through the back loop in the next row. So here on the next needle, I follow the very same repeat. So a knit one, knit front and back, knit front and back, knit across, and 2 stitches. Let me get more yarn here. 2 stitches before the edge, I slip one knitwise, slip back, knit it, lift back the loop, and knit that through the back loop and knit one. So it's going to be the same repeat for the next couple of rows. And by the way, I'm knitting this with the magic loop technique. And I do have a full tutorial here on YouTube. I'll link it to you up in here in case you need to catch up or you have problems with ladders and all these sorts of things, because I'm not going too much into detail here in this tutorial. Of course, you can see me knitting, but maybe you want a full and much slower explanation. And again, I want you to increase in this manner until you have doubled your stitch count, and I'll see you there. In my case, once I have 32 stitches on my needle. So my little toe box is slowly taking shape, and I have 16 stitches on both needles. And now from here you need to increase in every second row. So here in this row, I'm just going to knit across. So just increase in every second row and no other changes. Maybe place a little stitch marker here at the beginning of your row. Maybe place a little stitch marker here so you don't accidentally miss a row and you know exactly where and when you need to increase. And in the next row, when you come across your little stitch marker again, you do another increase row. So you start with knit one KFB and knit across and an SKL on the other side. I know SKL might be a stitch you've never heard of before, and I do feel it should be so much more popular because everyone knows KFB, but no one knows SKL. Yet everyone always talks about left and right leaning decreases, so I thought I'd use this opportunity to show it to you. Anyway, from here, increase in that manner every second row until you've reached the desired number of stitches. I will stop at 52 stitches, but maybe you only need 48 or even 56 or 60, and I'll see you there. Yarn. Those first rounds are always a little bit more difficult, and I'll see you there. I finished my toe box, and this is the result. So we have these nice mirrored increase lines left and right. There are no little ears here, and there's one smooth transition. Now, if you have very long toes or your toes are shaped a little bit more on the pointy side, so maybe your foot looks more like this and not like this, then you may consider increasing in every second row right from the start. But most toes look more like this, so that is why I increase in every row at first. You could also opt to knit a left and a right sock and only increase in every second row on one side to achieve a, well, visibly left and right leaning toe box, but as a start, this is just fine. So I've knitted across 2 more rows. I always do this because I feel the transition between the colors will look a little bit better if I have a little bit of a buffer. And now I'm not going to change colors here at the beginning of my needle. Instead, I'm going to do it 3 stitches in. You could also do 4 or 5, but just not right at the gap because that typically doesn't look very neat. Then I break my yarn, and now I join in a new color with the twist and weave method. So I pick up my new color the way I usually would. Then I insert my knitting needle into the new stitch. Then I place my new yarn here in between. Place the old tail across. Then weave the tail here back. Knit a stitch or wrap the yarn around the needle as if to knit. Then weave back, pull down, and now I can pull through, and I already have a stitch here. It's a very secure bond or join, and then I continue knitting, and I will weave in the old tail as I go. So I don't need to weave that in later on. I'm not weaving in the new tail as I go just now. I will do that in the next row because I often feel, or often, especially if you have such a stark contrast between the 2 colors, you can often see it peeking through a bit. So that's why I do it a row later. And after you've covered, I don't know, 6 or 8 stitches in that manner, you can continue knitting as normal. If your yarn doesn't felt all that well, maybe do 8 stitches. And if it's a really fussy yarn, you certainly get away with 6 stitches. And here in the next row, I'm going to knit those first 3 stitches, but here, that first stitch in the new color, I'm not knitting it. Instead, I lift back the 1 row below back to the knitting needle and knit it together with my new stitch. And this will prevent a visible jog. And now I can weave in the new tail as I go. Again, I feel this is often a little bit neater if you stagger it by 1 row, but I entirely leave the decision up to you. And from here, you can continue knitting across either in one color or, oh, I guess I should weave in a little bit more here. And from here, you can continue knitting either in one color. That's perfectly fine if it's your first pair of socks. Maybe just stick to one color, or in stripes. And knit, until you covered around 5 centimeters or 2 inches. And I will see you there. Now we are going to knit a heel flap and gusset for our toe-up socks. I did a survey here in the community tab on my channel, and the majority of my subscribers wanted to see this heel. If you want to knit the German short row heel, I link you my full tutorial up in here. The German short row heel is a little bit easier to knit, and it's perfectly symmetrical, so the pattern stays the same no matter if you knit toe up or cuff down. But we are going to do a flap and gusset heel, but it's actually going to be very similar because you will turn the heel using the exact same technique as the German short row heel. Plus, you don't even have to pick up stitches for the heel flap, so maybe just go with the flow. First, however, we need to find out where, here, where are you going to start with the gusset increases? There are 2 ways to find this out. Number 1, if you own a pair of well-fitting hand-knit socks already with a flap and gusset heel you feel that is really comfortable, simply compare the 2 socks and start with the gusset when you reach the exact same point here. Now, if you don't, no worries, you can easily calculate it as well. First, I want you to put your foot on a piece of paper and draw the outline using a pencil, Sharpie, or whatever. Next, I want you to measure the distance from the lower end of your ankle knuckle to the beginning of the sole of your feet. In my case, that is around 5 centimeters. That will be the length of your heel flap here at the back and mark the beginning of your instep. And now the good news is we don't even have to do any math. This is super simple, trust me. Just measure out those 5 centimeters in a row. Important, not like this, but like this. So in a row, and count how many stitches you need. In my case, it's around 12 stitches, 11 and a half, so I'll go with 12. That's how many stitches you need to have here so you can accommodate your heel flap at the back. On a little side note, should you notice that your socks in the making don't fit at this point, which is a possibility, maybe it is a little bit too tight or a little bit too loose. This part here, those first 2 or 3 centimeters are always going to be a little bit loose. That's because knitting behaves a little bit different towards the edge. But if this here in the front, it feels too tight or a little bit too loose, then you would have to start all over again and cast on a couple of more stitches. Treat this as a learning experience, and on a positive note, now you already know the pattern, so you could focus on extra neat results. Either way, we still need to find out where to start the gusset, and this is just as simple, and you can keep your socks on for that. So we are going to knit the heel flap or the heel across half of the stitches. So 52 divided by 2, that's 26 stitches. And we are going to turn the heel here. We are going to turn the heel. See, we are going to turn the heel when there's only 1/3 of the stitches left here in the middle. So 26 stitches times 0.666 is roughly 17 stitches. This means our heel here, this part, will have roughly 17 or probably 18 rows. So here like this, count 18 rows and check how many centimeters or inches you need for those 18 rows. In my case, it's around 4.5 centimeters. Now remember, I told you we need 12 stitches for our gusset. So, and we will be increasing the gusset in every second row. So this means 24 rows. So again, check how many rows you need to cover 24 rows. In my case, that's around 6 centimeters. Note down these two numbers. So back to our little drawing here. So I know my heel needs around 4.5 centimeters and my gusset around 6 centimeters. And altogether that's around 10.5 centimeters. So I can simply take my measuring tape and measure things out. And here I already marked this spot. Here you need to start knitting the gusset. And now you can simply compare your knitting with your little drawing here. And once you reach this point here, you can start increasing the gusset. So I still got, well, roughly 4 or 5 centimeters to go. And I'll see you there. So my knitting here reached the desired length, and now we can start knitting the gusset. Just a little tip here. I mean, while we are at it, try your socks on a second time and check if they still fit. They should, but you know, better safe than sorry. So we will be knitting the gusset across the first needle, and for the other sock you would knit it across the second needle, and we will increase by 2 stitches every 2 rows here, left and right of the edge. And because I don't want to knit an increase into the first and into the last stitch, what I will do is I will shuffle 2 stitches here from the last needle back to my first needle, place a stitch marker, and then I knit a stitch, and now I can place my increase. I will use KLL knit left loop. So I lift this loop here of the stitch 2 rows below back to my knitting needle and knit it through the back loop. You could pick any other right leaning decrease as well. So maybe make one right, or a yarn over, knit through the back loop in the next row or whatever. But I really like the way KLL looks. And then I knit across as normal. Knit across this first needle, or your first and second needle if you are using TPNs. By the way, before you start the gusset, make sure that you still have an equal number of stitches on your on either side, just to make sure. And now here on the other end, you need to knit a KRL, knit right loop. So we're going to shuffle stitches around in a second, but here in this first round, we need to make do. So here, 1 row below is a loop. We lift that back to the knitting needle and we knit that through the front loop. That's KRL. And now we need to place a stitch marker, and you need to grab another 2 stitches from that needle, another 2 stitches from that needle, and then you can continue knitting. So you will knit across the back side, so you just continue your pattern, and then in the next round you just knit across. We will only increase in every second round. So as I said, here in the next round, you don't need to do anything special, just slip your marker and knit across. And here in the third round, you stick to the very same repeat. So you knit 2, slip the marker, knit 1, and place a KLL. So you lift this left loop back to the knitting needle and knit it through the back loop. Again, You can pick any other increase as well. Pick whatever you feel looks good in your eyes and works best for your pattern. There is no right or wrong here, but personally I feel KLL and KRL just look the neatest. And on the other side, one stitch before the marker, in this case, one stitch before the marker, you lift back the right loop to your knitting needle and knit it through the front loop. That's your KRL, and then you can knit one stitch, slip the marker and knit two. And continue in that manner until you can accommodate the full gusset. So I need 12 stitches. This means I need to repeat these two rounds 10 more times until there are 12 additional stitches here on either side before and after the little stitch markers, and I'll see you there. So I finished about, probably half of my gusset, and I wanted to use this opportunity to address an important tip. So far, the diameter of our little tube here has been determined by the circumference of our foot here at this point. And for a lot of people, this works just well. That being said, some people have a very pronounced instep or heel. And in this case, we have a problem because if you are going to continue the plain vanilla pattern, your leg, so what you will knit here to cover your calf, will have the exact same diameter. So why is this a problem? Well, as you put things on, your cuff and the whole leg needs to be wide enough so you can get it past the heel. Now knitting is stretchy, but it's not all that stretchy, maybe 10, maybe 15, maybe 20%, but certainly not 30%. So everything you knit past the heel needs to be stretchy enough to still fit through the ankle, which is typically the widest point of your whole foot. And I guess that is the big problem about knitting socks toe up. You will only be able to know that once it's too late. So right now you can't really test that. You will know that once you are up in here. Still, if you want a roomier instep, you need more stitches for your calf, then what you can do is, starting from about here, or maybe a little bit later, you could increase in every row instead of every second. This will create a much roomier, not longer, but roomier gusset and thereby heel and a higher heel flap. And later on, we'll get to that point very soon, you don't decrease your heel flap back to your original number of stitches. So in my case, I had 52 stitches, so I won't decrease back to 52 stitches. Instead, I will keep, 54, 56 or 58 stitches on my needle. Now, I can't tell you exactly how many extra stitches you might have to add here in the gusset area, or if at all. But you have a big swatch here and in the form of your work in progress, and you also have a tape. Well, where is it? You also have a tape. So you know exactly your gauge. And so you can simply measure your calf or your heel and double check. Without presuming too much, most people who have a very high instep or a very pronounced heel already know the kind of problem because they face it whenever they buy shoes and so on. So if you are one of those, maybe double check if you don't need extra stitches here for the gusset. So I finished knitting my gusset. I already joined in a new color because I want to insert one orange stripe here, but you really don't have to do that. But now comes the probably only slightly difficult part. We need to turn the heel. And here is the good news. We will be knitting a heel flap and gusset heel here. But The next few steps I'm going to show you will be the exact same steps you would have to follow for a German short row heel. Of course, you wouldn't knit the gusset, but everything else will stay exactly the same. And I already showed you how to calculate where to start your German short row heel. Remember those 17 stitches we calculated and measured out? Well, you can use those. In my case, those were 4.5 centimeters. You can use those 4.5 centimeters and just insert a little marker here and then knit your leg until your knitting reaches this exact marker, and then you would have to knit or start with your German short row heel. And again, you will follow the exact same steps, or at least in the first part that I'm going to show you now. So before we start knitting, I want you to place 2 additional stitch markers. So those are the 2 stitches we slipped. Here's our stitch marker, and then we increased by 12 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 stitches, and I want you to place a stitch marker here. You can also do this while knitting across, but it makes it a little bit easier for me to demonstrate things. And do the exact same thing here on the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Here I'm going to place another stitch marker. And now simply knit across this first needle. Just knit across and slip the stitch markers as you go. Again, you don't have to do this in a different color. However, what you could do is, if you want to reinforce your heel, you could already join in a thin little nylon thread and knit across. I need to lift this here to avoid the jog. If you're knitting in a single color, you don't have to do this. And then I will weave in my tail as I go. Where is it? Here is my little tail. And I will weave it in, but of course, if you knit in one color, you don't have to do this. So like this. If you don't want to knit one full stripe, so I'm knitting a full stripe across the whole row. If you don't want to do that, obviously you could join in your new color here right at the stitch marker. You could do that. And then I knit across until I am 1 stitch before the next stitch marker. So here I am knitting across my original number, my original cast on stitches. So I had 20 before the gusset. We had 26 stitches on either side, and those here in the middle are those 26 stitches. Now 1 stitch before the stitch marker, I will turn my work around. So I stop 1 stitch before the stitch marker. Here we have our 2 little buffer stitches. Then we have 12 stitches. Those were our gusset stitches. We will need those later for the heel flap. And then I stop 1 stitch here before that stitch marker. I'm leaving this little 1 stitch margin on either side for a neater finish. If you want to knit a German short row heel, or you are working with a low number of stitches or a bulky kind of yarn, then knit up until the stitch marker. And now we need to turn our work around. From here on, we are going to knit, well, flat. So there are many ways. Now we turn around and we need to work our first double stitch. There are many ways to knit short rows, and you can pretty much use the technique you enjoy most. I'm going to knit my variation of German short rows. So Bring the yarn to the front and now insert your knitting needle into that first stitch knitwise, so as if to knit, and then pull on the working yarn to create a double stitch. See, by pulling down you should end up with 2 little stitches here. We're going to do that a couple of more times, so don't worry. And from here you simply purl across those middle stitches until you are 1 stitch before the next stitch marker on the other side. And in case you are knitting a German short row heel, again, you follow the exact same steps. So 1 stitch here before my little stitch marker. I turn around again, and now we need to create another double stitch. So bring the yarn to the front, and now we are going to slip this stitch purlwise, and again you pull on the working yarn to create a double stitch here. See this? Here there are 2 little stitches here, well, loops rather, not stitches. And then from here you can knit across your heel again, and you stop 1 stitch, or you stop before the double stitch. So essentially with each little row you knit, your row will get shorter, and that's why it's called short rows, I guess. So here, pay attention, here's our double stitch, and this is the last stitch we are going to knit. And then I turn around. The yarn is in front, and I insert knitwise, and then I pull down to create a double stitch, or rather a twisted double stitch. And now I purl back all the way until I hit the double stitch on the other side we created 1 row before. So short rows sounds very complicated, but it's actually fairly simple. So here is our little double stitch. You could place a stitch marker but they are very easy to see. This is our double stitch. We purl that last stitch, and now we turn around. The yarn is in front, and then we slip purlwise and pull down. Now, very attentive viewers might notice that I'm actually using a slightly different technique here on this side, or rather on this side. So why do I mix slipping knitwise and purlwise? Well, quite honestly, for me it creates neither results. Often I end up with slightly bigger holes here on the left side, and that's why I create twisted double stitches here on this side and normal double stitches on this side. But again, do whatever you feel is easier or neater for you, and you need to repeat decreasing, or rather turning your heel with short rows in that manner until there is roughly a little bit below 1/3 of the stitches left. So in my case that will be when there are 8 stitches left here in between, and I'll see you there. So I made some good progress, and I'm in my last 2 rows. So one more time I turn around, slip knitwise, pull down, and then I purl across those, well, in my case, last 9 stitches. 9 stitches. And then I turn around again, bring the yarn to the front, and here on this side I slip purlwise. So I have my double stitches here all lined up on this side. Then I have 8 stitches, 8 normal stitches here in between, and then the double stitches here on this side. And now we can start knitting our heel flap. And this is going to be just as simple, but you may want to knit a bit slower, maybe move a little bit closer to the window or to your light source so you can see these double stitches a little bit better. And now we knit across, but instead of turning around here, we will knit all these double stitches through the back loop. On this side, we are going to knit these double stitches through the back loop. So insert your knitting needle into, well, both stitches, I guess, at the same time, and knit across, and make sure that you don't split the yarn or anything. And just knit all these double stitches through the back loop. So as you can see, this can be a little bit tricky at times. Maintain a nice enough tension so you don't end up with big holes, and knit every little double stitch on this side through the back loop. So splitting the yarn here. One more. So this is our last double stitch. So you stop one stitch before the stitch marker. This was the one stitch we didn't turn into a double stitch. If you want to knit a German short row heel, from here you would have to knit across those 2 full rounds. Obviously you don't have those gusset stitches here. Instead you would be here at this point here, 1 stitch before this stitch marker. And then knit across 2 full rounds, and then turn the heel, or knit short row starting here from the inside working towards the outside. I link you to my German short row tutorial up in here if you want to continue like this, because I'm not going to show this part now. Instead, we are going to knit our heel flap. So to knit our heel flap, we need to join these gusset stitches together with our heel stitches, and we'll do that by decreasing the stitches into each other. So on this side we'll do it with SSK, and here on this side with purl 2 together, and we'll continue knitting flat. So slip this stitch knitwise, then slip the marker, slip this stitch knitwise as well, and then knit them together through the back loop. You could of course pick any other left leaning decrease as well. Then slip this stitch here, the SSK, purlwise with yarn in front. Then place your marker again, and then purl across until you are 1 stitch before the stitch marker on the other end. However, we still need to take care of the double stitches on this side. We already knitted the double stitches on this side, and now here you will run across double stitches on this side. And I didn't twist these double stitches, so we can just purl them together. Purl them together, but again, be careful, make sure that you don't accidentally split the yarn, make sure that you enter both stitches at the same time, and so on. So go slowly, take your time. This can be a little bit tricky. And knit each and every little stitch together. Purl together, sorry. Purl together. And here, oops, split the yarn. Sorry. Purl that last stitch. And now we need to purl. We need to purl these two stitches together. So I'm going to slip this stitch for a second to remove my stitch marker and slip it back. So we will purl these two stitches together. Purl the two stitches together. Turn around and slip that stitch purlwise with yarn in back, and then place your stitch marker again, and then knit across. And once after the stitch marker, we will decrease with SSK again. So I hope you don't mind that I go through this part rather diligently and don't skip too much. So I am going to slip my marker here, and now one more time we are going to SSK these stitches. Try to work close to your tip, SSK, and then turn around and slip purlwise with yarn in front, slip the marker and purl across. Again, if you prefer a different decrease, then use that. There's no need to use SSK. Maybe you feel SPK is neither, or you just want to knit two together through the back loop. That's fine as well. Purl across, slip the marker, and again purl these two stitches together. Well, that didn't work. Purl these two stitches together, turn around and slip one purlwise with yarn in front, slip the marker. And from here you continue repeating these two rows until you decreased almost all gusset stitches, and I'll see you there. So I've knitted my heel flap for another 30 minutes or so, and now there are only two stitches left on the left and on the right side left. And we are going to join things back in the round. So I won't decrease these last two stitches using short rows, but I will knit in the round because I feel this creates a neater transition here. But let's appreciate what we've knitted here for a second. So you should have a nice little decrease line here, no big holes. Try to tighten up the second stitch after you slip the stitch to avoid that, and then here a nice and neat heel turn without any big holes, and a nice and neat transition here. So, and from here, as I said, we continue knitting in the round. So I just knit across, and I knit across, and then here at the stitch marker you can drop the stitch marker, we won't need it anymore, and then I SSK those last two stitches, then I slip the marker and continue knitting in the round. So we are back in the round here, and from here you can continue knitting in, well, plain stockinette stitch or whatever your pattern is. So you successfully knitted your heel. Well, there's one little step remaining on the other side, but that should be easy enough. And here on the other side I slip my marker, and now you have to knit these two stitches together. So you can't purl them together anymore, so you have to knit the corresponding stitch for the right side, and that is purled, knit two together. You can remove that marker, and from here you can continue knitting according to your pattern. In my case, I will continue knitting those stripes in plain stockinette stitch. And there's one last little thing I need to address. Remember, I told you that if you want a roomier heel because you have a high instep or very pronounced heel, that you could increase in every round here for the last couple of rounds of your gusset. Well, if you did this, then obviously you wouldn't stop knitting your heel when there were heel flat when there were 2 stitches left, but 3, 4, 5, 6, or however many extra stitches you added here. Just felt like mentioning that, even though I think it is obvious. So you just stop a couple of stitches before for a roomier heel. So I knitted another, well, probably 5 centimeters here, and there is one question that remains. How long should you knit the calf? Well, there are those who would argue simply stop when you feel like it or when you run out of yarn. But the truth is, a good fitting sock follows a very precise calculation. So you have, or I have, 52 stitches per round, and I already know the gauge of those stitches. We know the ideal circumference. We already measured it at the very start, 23 centimeters in my case. And then pick up your measuring tape again and check where your calf has the exact same circumference. In my case, 23 centimeters. Just slide it all the way up and then stop knitting about 1 or 2 centimeters above that spot. We want the cuff to have a nice grip and not slide down, other than down at the foot where we originally started measuring. Here we want our heel to be comfortable, but up in here we want some grip. So stop about 1 or 2 centimeters above that spot. But what happens if you have rather strong calves and your legs look rather a bit like that? I'm exaggerating now. And if you follow my advice, you would have to stop your socks somewhere here. And if you want to knit some stripes or, add some lace to your socks, that might not be all that nice. You don't have enough canvas to knit with. Well, in this case, and whenever you want to knit knee-high socks, you need to insert a calf gusset here at the back of your calves. Let me show you. So let's suppose this was the spot where the circumference of my calf is 23 centimeters. And I need more room. And so I want to start knitting a calf gusset. So what I will do is I will place 2 stitch markers left and right of the 2 centermost stitches. So I have 12 stitches here, 12 stitches here, and 2 here right in the middle. And then I knit across. So I knit across until I hit the stitch marker. So here, then I slip the marker and knit 1 and KLL again. Knit left loop. I lift this loop back to the knitting needle, and then I immediately will knit a KRL. knit right loop, I lift this loop back to the knitting needle and knit that, slip the marker. You could of course knit any other combination of left and right leaning. It increases. I need to fix this stitch here. Don't know what happened here. And then you knit across one full round. So you knit across until the start of your round, and then one more round, and I'll see you in the third round. And here in the third round, you knit across in pattern until you hit the stitch marker, you slip the marker, and then you knit one KLL again. So you always slip the marker, KLL, knit across until you are one stitch before the marker, and you place a KRL here on the left side and knit one stitch and slip the marker and knit across one more round, and continue increasing in that manner in every second round until your socks are wide enough. And you can very easily calculate that. So simply measure the widest point of your calves, and you already know that those 52 stitches here, you already know that they are 23 centimeters in my case. And from there, it's an easy rule of 3 to know how many stitches you need for, say, 30 centimeters. And if your calves are not that strong, you might only increase in every third row instead of every second row. And then later on, if you want to knit I don't know, knee-high socks or so, you would have to and most calves get narrower towards the calf, towards the knee, sorry. You would have to decrease with SSK after the first stitch marker and knit two together before the second stitch marker. And here is the good news. You can use this calf gusset and incorporate stunning designs. In my home country, Bavaria, traditional socks typically use the calf gusset to insert the most stunning designs, a bit like this diamond shape here. Sadly, most modern, especially American knitting patterns, drop those details and calf gussets altogether, or I don't know, heel gussets and whatever else you can do to modify the shape of a sock. So a sock really doesn't have to be one straight tube that only fits the rare few perfectly. So maybe do some research traditional Bavarian sock patterns if that is something you are interested in, and you'll be in for a treat. Either way, continue knitting until you hit that sweet spot, and I'm going to unravel my little calf gusset here because I don't need it for this design. So I've made some good progress here, and now we only need to finish our socks by knitting the cuff. We'll do that using a 2x2 rib stitch. I already knitted across one row in my new color to ensure a neat transition, and now you only need to do the ribbing. So I'm going to knit these first 3 stitches here because this is the start of my round, and now you need to knit 2 and purl 2, knit 2 and purl 2, and make sure that you tighten up after every first purl stitch. So while the stitch is still on the needle, tighten up a little bit, because this will ensure that your ribbing ends up looking nice and neat. But other than that, the repeat is super simple, and you will have to knit around 5 centimeters in this 2x2 rib stitch, and I'll see you for the bind off. Oh, and while I continue knitting across the return row, one more thing. You might wonder, well, where's the difference between a 1x1 and a 2x2 rib stitch? Well, first of all, they look a little bit different, and they are, the 2x2 rib tends to be a little bit more stretchy. However, I would say if you are knitting with a chunky yarn or a small size, meaning you only have a couple of stitches on your needle, say 30 or 40. A 2x2 rib stitch often doesn't look all that well because you just end up with 3 or 4 ribs. And the same applies to if you're knitting with, say, fingering weight yarn or so, and you have 80 or 90 stitches in the round. Well, and then if you knit a 1x1 rib stitch, you almost don't notice it's ribbing, and it almost looks a bit like stockinette stitch. So in these cases, a 2x2 rib stitch will always or will often look a lot better. So I made some good progress in the past, well, 30 minutes or so, and I've knitted my cuff around 20, I did around 20 rows to cover around 5 centimeters. One little tip here, some people will go down a needle size to knit the cuff to create neater ribbings. However, your legs get dramatically wider the further up you go, and if you are a tight knitter, this could potentially mess up your gauge, and your cuff might end up too tight. So be very, very careful. Anyway, there's one step remaining. We need to bind off our stitches, and we will do that using the surprisingly stretchy bind off. But of course, you could pick any other stretchy bind off of your choice. So this bind off is fairly simple. Start with a backward yarn over or a backward loop. So a normal yarn over goes like this, but you do it like this. And then you knit one stitch and pass the yarn over. Then you add another backward yarn over or backward loop and knit one stitch. Now you have 3 stitches on your needle, and you pass the second and the third, or well, no, it's the second over. Then the next stitch is a purl stitch, and the rule for this bind off is very simple. Before a purl stitch you do a normal yarn over, and before a knit stitch you do a backward yarn over. So we do a yarn over and purl that stitch, and then you pass the 2 stitches over. Then another purl stitch, so a normal yarn over, purl that stitch, and pass 2 stitches over. Now pay attention again, this is a knit stitch, so not a normal yarn over but a backward yarn over, knit that stitch and pass over. And in that manner you can create a very, very stretchy edge, and for sock cuffs you typically want very, very stretchy edge. So I bound off all stitches in that manner, and my bind off is super stretchy. Do me a favor and try your finished socks on right away now and check if they fit and if you can put everything on. And if things are stretchy enough, then we can weave in the tail. But before you do that, I recommend bridging this gap so you don't end up with a visible stair here. And that's actually remarkably easy. So see this last V here, see this last little V here, and we go underneath this coming from the front, and here on the other side there is another V here, and we go underneath that V as well. Pull the yarn through, and already we closed that gap, and now we can pull the yarn through to the other side and then weave in our tail here on the wrong side. And for ribbing, I typically follow the course of one of those knit columns and spare right through the threads, pull the yarn through, and then do the same in the other direction. And I feel this is both very secure and quite invisible. One last thing, and again, if you use a sharp tapestry needle, typically it is a little bit easier. Stretch things out, don't pull too tight, and then trim the excess here, and there you go. You finished your socks. Now you might have to weave in the rest of the tail, so please do that. Put on your socks and wear them with pride. Just one quick little note here: if you don't like the surprisingly stretchy bind off, you can also pick this very neat and stretchy bind off for the 2x2 rib stitch. So before a knit stitch, you always knit the stitch, and then you knit the 2 stitches together through the back loop again. Before a knit stitch, you knit the stitch and you knit them together. And before a purl stitch, you purl the stitch and then you purl these 2 stitches together. Again, purl stitch, you purl, and you purl them together. So super simple, and this will also result in a very stretchy edge. And if you need even more give, then you can always bind off with 1 or even 2 needle sizes larger. I just felt like mentioning this, but pick whatever bind off you prefer. So we are back here in my studio for some final words. First of all, knitting socks toe up is actually quite the straightforward process once you understand it. At the same time, that first sock can be quite difficult. I may say it's simple, but you may not feel that's entirely true, and that is totally okay. It is also totally okay if your first sock looks a little bit more on the charmingly homemade side. You are learning a new skill, and that always takes a little bit of trial and error. Take notes and check your finished sock and try to determine where you could adjust things. Maybe you need to cast on a couple of more stitches. Maybe a bigger gusset for a roomier heel would be nice. And maybe you need to knit that leg a couple of more stitches so your cuff doesn't always drop down. Again, take notes and try to incorporate all those findings in your second sock. Often, that first one has to be treated as an exercise. And the good news is, if you use the same yarn, could be a different color of course, and the same needle size for your next pair, you already know what to do and you don't need to calculate everything all over again. And the second thing I want to mention is knitting socks toe up is not better or easier than knitting them cuff down in and by itself. It doesn't automatically or magically lead to better results either. Just like you can knit them with circular needles or double pointed needles or one of these mini needles, all of these techniques are valid. The advantage of knitting socks toe up is of course that you don't have to graft stitches, so you don't need the Kitchener stitch and you don't have to pick up stitches here for the gusset either. On the other hand, it will be a little bit more difficult to adjust the size of your calf as you have to knit up until this spot before you can see if you were right, and then you have to unravel all the way to this spot. Most knitters are, of course, not all that obsessed with getting things perfect anyway, so there won't be a big difference in that respect. When you're knitting socks 2 at a time toe up, that's a technique better left for another video, and make sure to comment if you want me to record one. You could knit from either end of a yarn cake and then stop knitting once you are out of yarn. Won't result in the perfect fit, of course, I'm not gonna lie to you, but you could always insert a little rubber band into the cuff to make up for that. Anyway, that's how to knit socks toe up. Happy knitting and enjoy the rest of your day!